So I took that thought and wrote down a list of what I thought were the 12 greatest discoveries of the future that we had to attack. And the first one was how the UFOs work. The second was time travel. Well, not time travel was towards the end, but the processes of the brain and the mind, psychic discoveries, psychokinesis, that sort of thing, and a bunch of those things were on the list. And the amazing thing is that today, in 2017, I am satisfied that my list that I said would maybe, and I give a probability of discovering these things, 20 years from now, my list was essentially already discovered, every single one, including time travel, at the time that I gave this paper.
My engine's complete. I rebuilt it. I have the entire package setting and outsourced on the servers around the planet. Upon my death, the servers dump everything onto the web. And I mean everything. Blueprints, schematics, diagrams, list of materials, list of tools, list of suppliers that will help you get the tools, dimensions, 3-dimensional working models. You'll be able to any normal lab would be able to reconstruct this thing, get the same results I did. And I want that done because that will be validation of technology. But once it's built, it's not going to sit there. They're going to use it. And I expect in a year's time, once that kind of technology is dumped, they build it, they start using it, oil is reduced to a lubricant planet-wide, and that's it. That's the first step. Imagine what happens next. I don't want to be around. That's the reason it would be a media circus, and I just not into that. So I'll just leave it behind, and y'all can play with it and do with what you want.
So how do we hear all of this information and not feel disempowered? How does it not feel hopeless? Well, I look back when I start to feel hopeless to the reports of legitimate ET contacts that have occurred in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. In all of those reports, the ETs asked two things: grow spiritually or expand your consciousness, and demand the release of suppressed technologies from your governments. Those are the two things that we can focus on. If we begin to organize and demand the release of suppressed technologies, they will have no choice. If we focus inwardly on whatever our religion is, becoming the best human being that we can, and expanding our consciousness beyond our comfortable belief systems, when we do those two things, we are going to gain the freedom that we desire.
I started realizing that the cabal or the Illuminati or whatever you want to call them, they keep us fighting with each other intentionally because they know that the potential in our unified consciousness, should we ever come together and stop fighting with each other, is extremely powerful. And they have been using that energy against us, like farming and managing our consciousness in such a way that we spin out a version of reality from the thoughts they program into us that makes the Matrix, just like in the Matrix films. And so we have made the Matrix that's our prison. We made it from our consciousness and our thought that's been managed, farmed, programmed, and controlled. And if that's true, then we have the power within ourselves to come together and stop fighting with each other and remake the world. And emotion is key. We're not taught anything about how to deal with our emotions in this world. It's like a big black hole, and we just spurt emotional energy all over the place like an out-of-control garden hose. You know, would we waste money like that in most cases? Would we waste gasoline in our car that way? No. Well, we need to look at our emotional energy the same way, because that's the big key. And we have powerful emotions as human beings, and that means a lot of emotional power. But the only way we can wield it is to come together and find our commonalities and build on those, and stop looking at our ideologies that might divide us and our beliefs that might divide us. We've got to come together. We've got to focus on the fact we're all human beings. We all have hearts and souls and conscience. And we need to look at what brings us together, and then we need to take the emotional energy of that love and connection and make that really, really powerful, and then release it intentionally in waves of consciousness, energy, and power that can remake this world and the matrix it's based on in ways that we want for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren, for all the animals in the environment. We can remake it just through the power of consciousness. We can get full disclosure just through the power of consciousness. But we can only wield this energy together, and we can only wield it with love for each other and the planet.
We're at the early stages of this movement, and every movement, whether we're talking about the civil rights movement, the abolition movement, the women's rights movement, it's always, once it reaches a kind of like a critical mass, then the political changes happen.
So this is a very, very compelling story. I do believe that it's time for all of us to take a stand. We cannot simply step back and allow all these things to happen. Even if we don't fully believe everything that the people in this movie and other insiders like them have been saying, it's worthy of our consideration. Can we really afford to be so ignorant as to turn our backs on this information? We don't have the time to sit around and argue about whether this information is true. The planet is dying. We have economic collapse. We have mass starvation. We have the largest mass extinction since the collapse of the dinosaurs. Our ecosphere is collapsing. We see the lack of water. We see ever-increasing global temperatures, and no one really is doing anything about it. The entrenched power structure stays the way it is. We're still burning fossil fuels. We're still not getting access to these amazing technologies. If we do get full disclosure, now the dam breaks. Now we're in a totally new reality, which very well could be the golden age that was promised to us in so many different ancient teachings and traditions. I do believe that in our lifetimes we will see the full disclosure of the so-called forbidden technology. We will become a truly galactic civilization, and we will do this with the cooperation of people in the military, people in the intelligence community, people who were working for the cabal and have decided to break away from all that, become insiders, and be the change that we want to see in the world. This film is an embodiment of that global movement. This film is the red pill that wakes you up to what's really going on in the world. They do not have the staff to fight us. The cabal is losing. We are on the winning side of history. We are moving forward step by step, and at some point this is all going to break open. So when we raise consciousness, when we come together as a group, when we create this initiative, when we define what we want, by having that be our state of mind, we are literally transforming this planet into the golden oasis that it was always supposed to be, and the breathtaking future that we have been hearing about from so many ancient traditions. Whether you want to call it ascension, the golden age, whatever it is, I do believe it's possible, and it is up to us to co-create this amazing reality.
Power in defense of freedom is greater than power in behalf of tyranny and oppression, because power, real power, comes from our convictions, which produce uncompromising action. Every daring attempt to make a great change in existing conditions, every lofty vision of new possibilities for the human race, has been labeled utopian. Like it or not, everything is changing. The result will be the most wonderful experience in the history of humanity, or the most horrible enslavement that you can imagine. We must draw our strength from the very despair in which we have been forced to live. We were born with potential. We were born with goodness and trust. We were born with ideals and dreams. We were born with greatness. We are the universe in ecstatic motion, and it does not require many words to speak the truth. The ultimate end of all revolutionary social change is to establish the sanctity of human life, the right of every human on the planet to liberty and well-being. Do not allow yourself to get lost in the fear of change. Remember, the wound is the place where the light enters you. We are here to laugh at the odds and live our lives so well that death will tremble to take us.
Very importantly, I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the 6th branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement.
If you are willing to come forward with information regarding suppressed technologies, you can do so anonymously through secretspaceprogram.com. We have end-to-end encrypted communication options available and a Tor site that supports dead drops of any file types.